Today is a very special day. It's the 21st day of the month of Adar. It's the Yortzeit of Rabbi Elimelech Weisblum from Lizhensk, which I have the privilege to be son after son, about either 8 or 9 generations, depend how you count it. So for sure it's something related to the Daf. I don't think it's by coincidence that speaks about Noam Elimelech and a connection to our Daf. I'll elaborate on that later. But in the Daf itself, what we're going to study is first a continuation of the subject of uncertainty, when we are speaking about the last day of festival of Sukkot. And for sure we have a serious differentiation between the people who live in Eretz Israel versus people who live in the diaspora. And when is the uncertainty with the exact day, what do you do as far as dwelling in the Sukkah and as far as making a bracha at the Shmini Atzeret, which we hold it's a regel b'fnei atzmo, it's a separate holiday. In addition to that, the whole question of Shehecheyanu, in the day of Shmini Atzeret, the day that we, as we said, consider it's a separate festival, since Shmini Atzeret is the 7th day, how you treat it in the comparison, if you try to juxtapose that to the 7th day of Pesach, do you treat it as a different or not? So the truth is, the source, the makor, for all these halachot of Shmini Atzeret, you treat it with a separate Shehecheyanu. The poskim, our sages, derive from our sugya today. So it's page 47. We just started at the very end of page 46b. The Gemarrah now have a discussion regards to the mitzvah of dwelling in Sukkah in diaspora during Shmini Atzeret, since it's the state of uncertainty if it's part of the previous days of Sukkot. So for those who are not so familiar, we have the festival of Sukkot. As you know, we started in the month of Tishrei, middle of the month, and then we have the first holiday of Sukkot. Diaspora there are 2, and then we count the intermediary days. But then we have the last part. How we treated that part? Do we consider that as part of the 7th day of Sukkot, or it's a separate festival of Shmini Atzeret? Amar Rav Yehuda bar Rav Shmuel bar Sheilat. So this is 4 lines from the bottom of page 46b. Mishmei derav Shmini safek shvi'i lesukah, safek shvi'i lesukah, u'shmini levracha. So he said, we have the obligation to dwell on Sukkah on Shmini Atzeret in any place outside of Eretz Israel, because it's called safek shvi'i, you're uncertain if it's the 7th day of Sukkot or not. And then they said, and as far as the Shmini Atzeret, to call it as a separate festival of the 8th of Atzeret, it's you add the bracha, which is et Yom HaShmini Chag HaAtzeret Hazeh. So that's the way the Or HaChaim, the Ramah in Or HaChaim Mitafresh Samechet said. So basically, in that sense, you do it without Sukkah. Rabbi Yochanan Amar. Rabbi Yochanan disputed, and it's very important to remember what Rabbi Yochanan is about to say. He said, Shmini lazeh velazeh. Regardless in the idea of dwelling in Sukkah, or the special bracha for the Yom Tov, which is doing our prayer, doing our davening, doing grace after meal, the Birkat Hamazon, and doing the Kiddush. So you have to use both. Meitav. So now the Gemara elaborates on that and said, Kula alma lo pliged de'atvinan. Everyone agrees that in the Shmini Atzeret a person need to dwell in Sukkah, even according to Rabbi Yochanan that said Shmini zelazeh, which means that he still hold that as far as the people who live in diaspora, on Shmini Atzeret they need to dwell in Sukkah. Why? Because it's safek shvi, because you're uncertain if it's it might be the 7th day of Sukkot.
So that's specifically referring to the diaspora.
Yeah.
There it's Israel. It's
so far no.
Okay.
Now the Rishonim ask this question: since you are in a state of uncertainty, why, because of uncertainty, you have to dwell in a sukkah? And lulav, you don't go like that. Lulav, you don't say that you need to go with Shmini Atzeret for lulav. So basically, Tosfot deal with that, and others. One of the answer, it's because lulav is the issue with muktzeh when it's come to a festival. And the sages allow it only before the mitzvah of Netilat Lulav, the first day of Sukkot, because the Torah allow it. Now, since the 8 days is the holiday, but only out of state of uncertainty, you cannot override the prohibition of muktzeh, of setting aside, in order to take the lulav that day. There are those who say that that's the Ran. He says that you have to differentiate between biblical precept and rabbinic commandment. He said Sukkah for the entire 7 days, it's a biblical precept. The taking lulav the 7th day, it's only rabbinic, because if you go by the way we learn, outside of Beit HaMikdash the obligation was only for the first day, not the rest of it. So even the rabbis come out and said that they need, because if it's a state of uncertainty, they need to dwell in the sukkah from that state of uncertainty. They are not stringent when it comes to lulav, because it's they don't add more if it's an lekula amalu pligei that you need to dwell in Shmini Atzeret ki pligei. What is there? They disagree. 47 levaruche. So they only in regards to say the bracha leishav basukah. Leman damar shvi'i lesukah baruch enam mevarchinan. So you also make the bracha to dwell in the sukkah in the 8 days. Why? Because certainly you are not definite with the 8 days. So it's the same, since you are thinking maybe it's a 7th day of Sukkot. So even it's a Ran said it's a machloket rishonim, it's disputation if you need to make the bracha for something that's safek mitzvah. But here they hold that you make the bracha if you are not sure if it's a mitzvah outside of Israel. So they say leman damar shmini lezeh v'lezeh baruch lo mevarchinan. So the one Rabbi Yochanan that said that shmini they said both. So you don't say the leishav basukah. Now that's according to Rashi. So basically what he said, Rabbi Yochanan hold that he said that all the prayer need to match to each other. So since we said all the other places in the Kiddush, in other places, Shmini Chag Atzeret Hazeh, so you cannot say leishav basukah, because it's like two different things. That's the way we understand from the Rif, from the Rosh, from the Meiri. There is another school of thought, the Ran and the Ritva, that said that people should not denigrate, should not belittle the value. So therefore, they don't. The Mordechai said it should not appear like he add more to the mitzvot, not any violation of Bal Tosif. Omar Rav Yosef. Rabbi Yosef said, Nekot de Rabbi Yochanan biyadach, which means you don't make bracha leishav basukah the 8th day of Sukkot outside in the diaspora. Okay? So in other words, a person is obligated to dwell, but he's exempt from the bracha. The Ravuna bar Bizna v'chol gulad lo ikalu basukah b'yom shmini safek shvi'i. It's a story about the giant scholar of Israel that they went to the Sukkah at the 8 days, and it was not clear if how you treated it as an independent festival or the previous day or the 7th day of Sukkot. Meitav havu yatvei baruch lo berichei. So they dwell in a Sukkah but didn't make the bracha, which is they follow the notion of Rabbi Yochanan. So my uncle, זה still a mashgiach in Nachlat Alvi. There is a wonderful yeshiva in Haifa, in Neve Sha'anan, the place that my father was a rav for more than 40 years. So there is a yeshiva there, very well known yeshiva called Nachlat Alvi. So my uncle, Rabbi Weisblum, is a mashgiach there. So years back, He was a mashgiach in Be'er Yaakov, but before that he was in Antwerp, in Belgium. Teacher, and they were doing a... So I remember once we talked about, years back, talk about what they do over there on Shmini Atzeret, how they really do it. So in short, what he told us, in my best recollection, in one hand they went to the sukkah, but they didn't do the bracha. Anyway, so they said, Tosfot tells us, you see just the vignette of the Tosfot, the first Tosfot on that top of the page, Meitav kule alma lo plige de atvina. So Tosfot here speaks about the difference with kumaseh. So he said, just in short, he says, Belulav lo ratzul taken klal shitalnu alav misafek. They don't want to take the lulav because it's a state of uncertainty. לפי שהוא יום טוב ומוקסל דלתלו, מי נקרא דלמילתאי דנשוק במנהג חול. It's yom tov, you have an issue that it's set aside for carrying it, and it's clear that it's a minhag חול, it's like the regular day manners. אבל סוכה, פעמים שסוגתו הרבעה עליו, הוא אוכל בה אפילו ביום טוב. Some people, you know, they enjoy the landscaping feeling of being out in the fresh air. They go around even during the year. They just have the fun to go to the hut. Anyway, V'dilma svira lo. Maybe the sages hold. Keman de Amar, the one who said earlier, page 46, Kevan shebeirech yom tov rishon, shuv eno mevarech, since he made the bracha one time to dwell in a sukkah at the first day of Sukkot, he does not need to repeat again the mitzvah of dwelling in a sukkah the rest of the holiday. If that's the clear direction, the sages did not make the blessing on the sukkah in the 8 days anyway, because anyway they make the bracha earlier. I'll add to that a point. The rabbis tell us, if you remember, in pages 45-46, that if a person needs to make a bracha in each and every time that he come to the sukkah, let's say you go for breakfast, go to lunch, you go for supper, do you need to make leisha v'sukkah each and every time? So we're not yet in a practical halachot, but in general, it was a disputation. Should you make it one time for everything, or you make each and every time?
Just on the first night.
Yeah. So the idea is, so far we understand that yes, he needs to make a blessing each and every time he entered the sukkah. And Rav Yosef elaborated and he said, Gemarrah de me'afar atu. He derived from that from the me'afar meaning that it's a coming from the field where they have been herding the flocks, and that was the first time during the festival that they sat in a sukkah. So he said, Ikadamri is another option. Beruche kulam alo pliged lo mevarchin. Everyone agreed that you don't make the bracha. Ki pliged lemeitav, to dwell in the sukkah. Leman de'amar shvi'in lesukkah meitav yetvinan. Okay, because that's the Rabbi Yochanan. That's the need to make the shel basukah. That's the Rav. Uleman de'amar shmin lezeh v'lezeh. That's Rabbi Yochanan. Meitav name lo yadvinan. You didn't dwell in the sukkah that day. So basically the Ritva said that according to that view, Rabbi Yochanan hold that the essence of dwelling in a sukkah, even without making the bracha, it shows that this is a state of uncertainty between the 7th day and intermediary days, and therefore you have a concern that people belittle the value of the holiday. So he said, Omar Rav Yosef, Nekot de Rabbi Yochanan biyadach, which means even outside of Israel, you don't dwell in a sukkah the Shmini Atzeret. Demara de Shamata Minei, that who wants to say that you dwell in the sukkah the 8th day? Rav Yubed Rav Shmuel Bar Shila, and I saw that he himself did not do it. Ubashmini Safek Shvi'i leval misukkah yativ. So he said, in the 8 days, Rav Yehuda sat outside of the sukkah, which means that he followed halacha according to Rabbi Yochanan, v'hilcheta, which is a rare in the Gemara, but it's beautiful. Meitav yatvinan, and the halacha is that we reside in the sukkah on the 8th day. with regard to which there is uncertainty that it might be a 7th day, Baruch Elo Mevarchina. So basically, you go by the Rabbi Yochanan that follow the first explanation, that do it this way, but the truth is, if you go to diaspora, Tosfot Dibur Matchil Meitav give us just the idea, but in general, the whole concept is that most of the congregation, they eat partially or fully outside of the Sukkah and Shmini Atzeret. So the one reason they say that the concern about belittle it is not applied there. The other one is all these apply only to the hot countries, Babylon, that people get used to sit and eat outside of the house. Remember that in those years it was not AC by any means. But the cold places, a person that dwells in the Sukkah at that time of the year, he does that only for the purpose of fulfilling mitzvah, because he's not deriving any joy or any benefit from that. So it means those places you have a concern that people belittle the law of the holiday by dwelling in the Sukkah the 8 days. So that's the reason why they abrogated it. Mordechai said that it's the issue of Bal Tosif, you should not add more than. Omar Rabbi Yochanan, Omrim Zman Bishmini Shel Chag, which means you have this Zman, since we said it's a regal b'fnei atzmo, it's a separate festival. So now we talk about the definition of the Yom Tov. So he said the Shechianu in Shmini Atzeret ve'ein omrim Zman B'Shvi'i Shel Pesach. So the whole idea is it's continuation, because what we said Mikra Kodesh, and then the continuation you said Shechianu. So the whole idea goes, and he said that Zman B'Shmini Shel Chag, which means that's the time, ve'nomrim Zman B'Shvi'i Shel Pesach, because basically that's continuation of Pesach. So the question is, why you divided between 8 of the Atzeret and the 7 of Pesach? What Rabbi Yochanan tells us, he tells us that the Zman, which is the Shechianu, since it's regal b'fnei atzmo, it's independent holidays, so therefore you have the definition, the hagdara of Shechianu. It's a Mikra Kodesh, it is the sacred day, and he holds that since it's all one festival, so it's one thing. It says ve'ein omrim Zman B'Shvi'i Shel Pesach. Why? Because that's a continuation. You are now different between the 8 of Atzeret, Shmini Atzeret, and the Pesach. Pesach, he said that it's one Zman, in one time, the whole festival. It's continuation. ואומר רב לוי בר חמא ויתמר רבי חמא בר חנינא תדע שהרי חלוק בשלושה דברים. There's 3 items that it's different between Shmini Atzeret and the Pesach. The why? בסוכה, dwelling in a sukkah, ולולב, וניסוך המים, libation, that they did it only in the 7 days of Sukkot, and not Shmini Atzeret. That's basically what we learn in the Mishnah 42. ולרבי יהודה דאמר, and what Rabbi Yehuda tells us, which we're going to study on 48b, בלוג היה מנסח כל 8, entire 8 day of the festival, which means, according to him, they have the libation of the water on the altar. The 8th day of Shmini Atzeret, the same as the rest. So, meaning Rabbi Yehuda disputed Tanna Kama in 2 things. Number 1, he disputed him that he hold that the water that they put libation on the altar, it's only 1 log. Unlike the Tanna Kama that said that there are 3. And the second one, which is applicable to our discussion, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the mitzvah of do libation of the water apply only the 8, including the 8 itself. And according to the Kama, Rashi tells us they make this libation only in the 7 days of Sukkot. So, harei chaluk b'shnei dvarim. So according to this Chachamim, according to sages, the same way as you do Nisuch Hayayin 3 days, 3 logim, which is Revi'itain, that's the minimum amount. So when it's come to the Nisuch Hamayim, to do the libation of the water, Rabbi Yehuda hold that it's only the amount of Revi'it is for the 1 day. If you tell me that there is a dispute between them, it also have a different opinion between the first one and the 7th of Pesach, and that's what the Gemarrah asks. It's also different. If you make a difference between the first and last day of holidays, in Sukkot you can do it in Pesach, that you have a difference in the obligation to eat matzah. The first night of Pesach, it's a mitzvah to eat matzah. From that onward is a reshut. Why? The Torah said in Shemot chapter 12, Ba'erev tochlu matzot, the eve of the 15th of Nisan, you eat matzah. Which means that that's the amount of kezait matzah applied to the first night. From now on, even we are forbidden not to eat chametz, but we don't have the obligation to go ahead and eat matzah. You can eat other things. Which means that the last day of Pesach is different than the first one. So therefore, if that's the case, why you make only separate holiday for Shmini Atzeret and not separate holiday for Shvi Shel Pesach? So the Gemara, and why you don't make the Shechianu in the Shvi Shel Pesach, and you do make Shechianu for the Shmini Atzeret? So the Gemara said, Achi Asher, there are 2 terutzim, 2 explanations. In regard to Shvi Shel Pesach, Milayla Chaluk, the first night, in regards to eating matzah, the different Miyom eno Chaluk. The first day it's not, because even the first day of the festival, it's not an obligation to eat matzah, which means the center, the essence of the Yom Tov is during the day. And during the day, you don't have the chiyuv, you don't have the obligation to eat in the day, which means that's 15 in the morning. Which means that every single day make him this is an obligation. Ravina tells us Chaluk min shel fanav, which means from the 7th day before, which means the sukkah, the lulav, and libation of water applies to all 7 days, and not the 8th. V'zeh, which means the 7th day of Pesach, chaluk mishelifnei fanav, which means that's the earliest. Which means the Rashash explains that the whole idea of shehechiyanu v'kimanu v'yigi'anu lazman hazeh, which means that's today. Shmini Atzeret, that's different than yesterday. The Shvi Shel Pesach, it's not big different, because the previous days are Chol HaMoed, and you don't have the obligation to eat matzah. So what's the difference? They said, Amar Rav Papa, or Rav Papa Amar, what's the difference between Shmini Atzeret and the days before? He says the difference is in the offering. Here in regard to the 8 days, Ktiv, they said in the book of Namidbar, chapter 29, Par Echad, Ayl Echad. Hatam, the rest of the holiday, Ktiv Parim, which means there's more than one. Another difference, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, Ha Ktiv Bayom, the 8th day, Atzeret. Hatam Ktiv Uvayom. As you know, the Torah is very prudent. Uvayom. Rav Ashi Amar, Ha Ktiv Kamishpat, במספרם Kamishpat. That's the tricky for all Balei Kriya that messing up those parts, because it's Kemishpatam versus Kamishpat. Hatam, in regards to Menachot and Nesachim, for the additional Musaf of that 7th day, Ktiv Kemishpatam, the same way as all the other offering that comes the other days, which means the pasuk differentiate between the 8th day to the other days, and he make it mishpat independently. Now, you should know that that's Rashi's view. Soon you see that Tosfot said something very interesting. He said, דיבור המתחיל הכה דכתיב במשפט. בחולו כתיב כמשפט, ואי בתרא כתיב כמשפטם. ואין זה יקשין האחרים דרפא, אבל בחולו כתיב פרים, ובאי כתיב פר דקאי השמינן. Then he concluded, ואין שמיני הבא אחריו כמשפט זה לומר כמשפטם. Which means when you use the word כמשפטם, which is a full letters, full word, it's the completion of the previous one. So that's Kamishpat is like the new holiday. So Rashi at the beginning of Rosh Hashanah I elaborate on that. I just give you the vignette. So they said Leima Mesayale. Now we bring a proof to that, which is the Birkat Azman and the time of Shmini Atzeret. Let's bring a proof to that. Haparim, ha'elim ve'akvasim me'akvim זה את זה. They said bullets, blah blah, no. It's all this very
they're all part.
That's the korbanot, the special offering for Sukkot. So if you miss one, you cannot bring the korbanot. Let me elaborate on that. That's based on the Ritva, for sure Rashi, Meiri, and many others. The Torah used the term kamishpatam, not kamishpat. So it means the leikuva. If you have, for example, the obligation to bring 14, and you have only 12, so according to the dry law, the way it's written here, don't bother, don't get it, don't bother, and don't cut something from the field, etc. Just forget it. If you want, you bring, but you know. ורבי יהודה אומר, הפרים מעכבים זה שמעטבים והולכים. If you look at the way that they set up the parim, you are mathematician, and they said, the first day you bring 13 bulls,
That's right.
the second 12, etc. Which means the Torah did not require the amount of bulls, which means even one missing from all the others, you bring the Musaf offering. Which means that's different than the Elim and Kvasim, the ram and the sheep. They said that they have permanent wulo, so they respond. Chachamim said to Rabbi Yehuda, Va'alo kulan, even the ram and the lamb, mitma'atim v'olchim b'shmini, because they're bringing one bull, one ram, and 7 goats. So guess what happened? They reduced the amount of them at the 8 days significantly. And how you go about with that? Amar lahen shmini regel b'fnei atzmo. That's the most important part. It's a separate holiday. Shekeshem sheshivat yemei achav tunin korban. Same as the other offer of the days. They need a offering, ubracha, and they need a special blessing. Then he said, he said velina. So lina, the idea is first we said veshir. Shir, they said in the page 55 that it was a special songs. Rashi said שלווים אומרים בקורבנות שמיני אבל אינו מסדר שיר חג ולא פירש לי שיר של שמיני. Rashi did not know the exact text, but they connected somehow to the grave to Ninidis. And since the time of Sukkot is the time for collecting the harvest, so they do it in the offering, that everyone should hear them and do the same. Monkey hear, monkey does, etc. Ubracha velina, the lodging. Av shmini is independent, וטעון קרבן ושיר וברכה ולינה. So Rashi said, ללון לילה של מוצאי טוב וראשון בירושלים, the first night of the holiday in ירושלים, דגמרים בפסח, תכתיב, פניתי בבוקר ותענו אליך. You wake up in the morning, go to your home. ושיר וברכה ולינה. So Rashi said, ללון לילה של מוצאי טוב וראשון בירושלים. גם פסח תכתיב ודין פניתי בבוקר אליך, ביום טוב לא קאמר קרא, אשר יום שחררו, יכולים להראות ועזרה בכך. So it's an independent festival. Which means that when you use those ram, all the other animals, reduce the amount. 7b, my love, zman. You mean to say that that's applied to the blessing of the zman, which means the שהחיינו in Shmini Atzeret, lo, birkat hamazon utfila. Which means you add the word Chayom Chag HaSukkot hazeh during the grace after meal, and that's apply to Sukkot. Shmini Atzeret, you said the Yom HaShmini Chag HaAtzeret hazeh, which means the question is how about Shechianu? Do we depend on the first one? He said Hachename Mistabra. That's what Rabbi Yehuda meant when he used the word Bracha. That he meant to say the Zman, that the same way that the 7 days you need to have a blessing. Zman kol shiva me'ika. You say the Shechianu every day of Sukkot? No. You say it only the first day. So it means that that's applied to Birkat Hamazon and the regular the prayer. It applies to all 7 days. So the Gemarrah rejected that. It said that's not the problem. Halo kasha lo barich haidna. That if it did not make the bracha of Shechianu the first day, mevarech lemachar or yom achrina, he makes the bracha the next day or another day of the holiday, which means that each and every day has the potential befitting to say bracha Shechianu. So the Gemara asks, mikol makom, still question, how do you make the bracha for 7 days? It's applied to Shechianu. Kos ba'inan, we need to make the bracha of the kos, of the cup. So that's and the wine is not always there in the Chol HaMoed, which Rashi tells us something that fascinating. He says that it was a time of great poverty. People doesn't have a wine. So you see here that you don't have the obligation to drink wine in a place that they Chol HaMoed. But the Meiri said that you need to have, which called kos shetiknu Rabbanan, cup that the sage says to you, Leima, Messer le Rav Nachman. The Rav Nachman said in tractate Eruvin, Zman omro afilu bashuk. Even we said it in the person in the market, he doesn't carry the cup of wine. Di amar beinan kos. If you tell me that you need a cup for making the Shechianu, how Rabbi Yehuda said that that's applied to all 7 days. Kos kol yoma mi'ika. So again, as we said, it's not every day. Either because of people are poor or so Dilma the ikla lekos. So again, here's 2 avenues. If you go by Rashi or by the Meiri. So either you go by the Rashi, which means all of a sudden you have some wine. So therefore, it's applied to each and every day. You can do it even in Chol HaMoed. You can say Shechianu. According to the... So Rashi basically go by the avenue that there people are poor, they have no money for that. But the Meiri said the problem is that you have no bracha on the kos. You don't have the bracha on the kos. According to Meiri, if you have 3 people, and all of a sudden, boom, they see wine, so you make the yain of birkat hakos at that time of the zimun. Anyway, so the Gemara said, "V'sar Rabbi Yehuda Shmini Tolu Lina." Rabbi Yehuda hold that the 8th day of assembly required to stay overnight at its conclusion. ירושלים, והתניא, רבי יהודה אומר מנהל לפסח שנשאר אותנו לינה. How do you know the second time 14 of Iyar doesn't mean it to stay overnight in ירושלים? שנאמר, זה said, נרגעתי לינה, ופנית בבוקר והלכת לו עליך. זה said in the book of Devarim, chapter 16, you wake up in the morning, go back to your tent. וכתיב ששת מתוך המצות, so we, because it's next to each other, we learn עת שטעון שישה. Someone that needs 6 days, like you have the first Pesach, that you eat another 6 day מצה, טעון לינה. עת שאינו טעון שישה, like second Pesach, אינו טעון לינה. So you don't have that. למהות תימאי, what does this juxtaposition come to exclude? למהות נמי שמיני של חג, the 8th of the festival, that is not followed by the observation of the 6 days. So that's basically Rashi. But Rabbeinu Hananel doesn't want the word nami. So again, according to that, Rabbi Yehuda hold that it's apply only on 1 day. Shavuot only 1 day. So you see here that Rabbi Yehuda contradicted what he said earlier in the Mishnah. So Gemara said, "Lo lema'utei Pesach sheni dikvatei." So that no. So that's come to teach us the mitzvah of lina on the second Pesach in terms of its offering, and it teaches that since it's not followed by the observance of the 6th day, there is no obligation to stay overnight. למהות מאי, למהות נמי שמיני של חג, the 8th of Sukkot. That's basically separate. So לא, למהות פסח שני דקבתי. אכן אבל מסתברא, דתנא, now we're going to tractate ביקורים, the Mishnah chapter 2, the famous Mishnah, Mishnah 4. הביקורים, the Torah tells us in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 26, mitzvah to bring from the new produce a fruit to Beit HaMikdash, from the 7 species, from the Shivat HaMinim that Eretz Yisrael will praise for, which is chita, the wheel, sorah, the barley, gefen, the wine, te'ena is the fig, rimon, the pomegranate, zeit shemen, it's olive, tamar, it's like honey. So date. So it's a mitzvah to bring it to the Beit HaMikdash, to wave, to say psukim, and put it to the side of the mizbeach. So they said that bikurim tunim krovan, which means that the person need to bring the peace offering together with the first fruit. That's part of the mitzvah of simcha. So they said, what's the idea of simcha? Simcha, it means that you should praise Hashem, happy when you bring the collection of your fruits, and you are very happy, so you do it. So normally Melech said, since it's your side, we have to say something. So he said at the beginning of Bereshit, he said the meaning of Reishit. Reishit is the same here. That the Bikurim, the first fruit, the Torah called the Bikurim Reishit, the very beginning. So there are 2 things I'd like to say on his behalf. Once he said in his Tzetal Katan, it's a very short instruction, daily instructions, he said that it's an absolute obligation upon everyone to study Gemarrah, like Daf Yomi, every day. Second, he said that what is the Bereshit, the Reishit? He says they follow the first Rashi and the explanation of Bereshit and Reishit at the first Pasuk. So he said that it's the 2 aspects, I hope I'm saying it right because I'm translating it from Hebrew. He says that there are 2 aspects of the beginning. Reishit Bikurei Admatcha, the first of the first fruit. So he said the beginning is the idea that Hashem created everything. Use the word bet before the Reishit, Bereshit. So that's the concept of Memaleh Kol Almin Vesovev Kol Almin. That there is a God that is transcendental and is God that is immanent. Which means it's not only according to those philosophers that God is just building the world or upstairs and is not interfering with the daily mundane lives, but it's also God that is encouraging and is immanent, is part of our daily lives and He cares for us, etc. So that's the Bereshit, the beginning. The bet is the 2 separate attributes in our anthropomorphic way to explain the value of the omnipresence. So how it expresses? It's expressed to the Reishit. Reishit is the beginning. person has the first fruits. So in order for a person not to be supercilious, not to be too arrogant over, look at my field, look at my own property, I have these beautiful fruits, and they feel good about himself, etc., etc. Reishit bikurei admatcha, the first of the first fruit, tavi be'ed Hashem Elokecha. You have to go the Reishit to remember that since everything is from Hashem, you have to take the beginning and bring it to Hashem. Since Hashem, in that sense, care that you reach this point of your life. So it's not just hakarat hatov, that you recognize the goods that Hashem bring you. It's part of the simcha, of the being in a state of joy, that you are the emissary of Hashem to build His world, to be the vessel that hold the blessing and build His world. Anyway, they said Veshir, that's the song of the Shir, that's the Yerushalmi. They said that that's one of the beauty, it's the singing, they're bringing good vibe, good feeling. The Chezkel said, Ezekiel 33, he said, Yefeh kol metiv nagen, which means that that's part of the rejoiceful, that the Levites does when they bring the offering, the first fruit to them. Utnufa, that then they're waving it in the courtyard. Velina, that the owner sleep in Yerushalayim the night after they bring them. Man shmatlei, the Amar Tnufa, who is the one who said that they need to wave the first fruit. Rabbi Yehuda, that's according to Vekamar Ta'un Lina. So the Rabbi Yehuda did not derive the mitzvah of Lina only to the second Pesach. The Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, the Pasuk said in Deuteronomy chapter 26, Vehi nachto, you take the basket of the first fruit, Lifnei Hashem Elokecha, which means you need to do something before you do that, which is Zot Nufa, which means you have to wave the first fruit basket, and then you put it at the front of the altar. Maybe he's just putting there not to wave it. It's already written there. So you need to wave it. That the hold that the first fruit also needs to have the act of waving. What exactly the Kohen wants to take from you? That teach us the first fruits, Reishit, needs to do the waving. He makes Gemarrah Succot juxtaposition using the word hand twice from the peace offering. So since they use the word yad, meaning hand, in both places, we learn from this juxtaposition the same way as the first one in regard to peace offering applies to what? The mitzvah of tenufa, the mitzvah of waving it. The same way the first fruit is applied to waving it. What the other one we learn? Makan in lekicha, in the taking and waving it. Kohen, aflalan, Kohen, you have to use the Kohen. Malalan be'alim, the waving of the tenufa made by the owner. Afkan be'alim, haketzad. So it's be'alim or Kohen. It says Kohen maniach yedet achat be'alim v'menif. The Kohen bring, so some forshim even go to the extreme. You can have a Kohen that is elderly, or there's a Kohen that is a little boy. So that's the way you do it. But there's a big question that forshim asked here, how exactly you do it. So they said that you derive from this Mishnah that the owner hold the basket from the top and then the Kohen put it under his garment, and otherwise it's an issue of chatzitza. So in other words, you need to have some type of attachment to every vessel when it's come to when you touch this kli, this vessel. So they said, it's a famous question the Tosfot asked, and other asked, how do you do it in Sota? The Sota, the women stand there. and the Kohen is involved with his hand, with the hair. It says Maaseh Ka'uz, it's not. So there's all kind of ideas. Some say that they bring a young child or elderly, or some say that you have some type of tablecloth. Anyway, we didn't Tosfot, he explained it a little better. Maya ve'ala. So what in regard to this question, do we say שהחיינו אם נשמיע נעצרת או not? רב נחמן אמר, אומרים זמן בשמיני של חג, ורב ישש אמר, אין אומרים זמן בשמיני של חג, והלכת אומרים זמן בשמיני של חג. So basically we follow Rabbi Nachman that said שהחיינו נשמיני עצרת. תניא כבתי דרב נחמן, שמיני, which means we follow the Rav Nachman, we say זמן on the 8th day. Why? רגל בפני עצמו, that it's like independent festival by itself. To what? לעניין פזר קשב. פזר is abbreviation, פאי זמן רגל קורבן שירה ברכה, which is different acronym for the event of the שמיני עצרת, which is פאי בפני עצמו, they make a lot of it independent, which means they need to determine out of 24 which shifts will take place at that time. Pais בפני עצמו, which means making a lottery independently. זמן בפני עצמו, which means you don't exempt for making a little, juice, you drink a little juice. That's not. You have to separate independently. We said, רגל בפני עצמו, which means you don't dwell in a sukkah, as we explained. Korban bifnei atzmo, it's not in the order that's in the Sukkot. And then Levi makes shira bifnei atzmo, which is the shir shel yom, the song of the day. Bracha bifnei atzmo. So Rashi said, את יום השמיני הוא בתוספת משמע שמברכים את המלך. ביום השביעי שלחתם וברכו את המלך. It's act of respect. So there are few points. Since we said רגל בפני עצמו, we have to remember that when it's come to Sukkot we have 70 bulls. Now you have 24 shifts of the Kohanim. So sometimes you have ribuy avodah, sometimes you have a lot of work. So every Kohen allowed to partake, to participate. So the first day you have 13, the second day you have 12. And 7 days you have always a bulls. They did 3 times a day. But basically they used to have a lottery. They used to have a lottery. And then they make a separate zman. That's what שהחיינו. תוספות tells us, ניבוא המתחיל רגל בפני עצמו. So, which means that you don't dwell in the sukkah, so I'm just jumping few lines. ורבנו תם מפרש, רבנו תם, the grandson, Rashi explains, ברכה דאחה, ברכה למזון תפילה, כי העיד אליל ורגל בפני עצמו, עניין שלו לינה. ורבנו חנן מפרש לעניין שידחי אבלות. So, for example, a person that passed away doing Chol HaMoed. So, I remember at that time my son-in-law, Harav Reuven Deutsch, he is a giant Talmid Chacham, very blessed with son-in-law like that. So he said, I remember one time we have a case, he came here and he was in a rabbinical school, my son-in-law. He's a student in Kerem B'Yavne, he's Magid Shiur now, in teaching the Daf Yomi, teaching many things, ingenious in Halacha, he studied Dayanut. Anyway, so Reuven once, I don't know if you guys remember, but he came here once on Pesach. It was a question of Aveilut, someone passed away. And it was questions of sitting Shiva, how do you count Shiva, etc., etc. So basically we all know that you count 7 days from the regel. But if you bury it during the Chol HaMoed, so what do? You count 30 days from the time of burial. That's basically Rabbeinu Hananel. So he said if you add it to the number of the 30s, you have Shmini Atzeret that it's considering 7 days. So Moshe Feinstein said you cannot do that. But other Imer Baruch, there is a book called Imer Baruch, he brought both sides. So you see here, I remember Reuven gave the source in the Shulchan Aruch and everything right away by heart, the whole idea of Hilchot Chol HaMoed. But as you see, it's a machloket. The best book explained it is the Imer Baruch. He brought Moshe Feinstein the other side over there. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 668. Outside Eretz Yisrael, one eats in the Sukkah on the 8th day of assembly, as there is uncertainty whether it's a 7th day or 8th day. However, the blessing to reside in the Sukkah is not recited. In Kiddush and in the prayer in the 8th day of assembly is mentioned, and one recites the blessing of time, indicating that it is an independent festival. Most rabbis rule in this matter and according to the conclusion of the Gemarrah here. However, there are many different opinions among the halachic authorities, and correspondingly there are many different customs. Some eat an insubstantial or incomplete meal in the Sukkah on that day. Others eat in the Sukkah only during the day and not at night. Now the Noida B'Yehuda and Darkei Moshe and Maril, they said that the person should eat in the Sukkah only during the day and not at night, and one should not sleep in the Sukkah that night, and that is the prevailing customs. That's the Ba'eratel. So in all these matters, everyone should follow his local minhag. One recites the blessing of time at the start of the 8th day of assembly, since it is festival by itself. But one recites the Kiddush on the evening of the 7th day of Pesach. However, one does not recite the blessing of time because the 7th day is not a festival by itself, it's just continuation of the beginning of Pesach. Now, there is a positive mitzvah by Torah law to eat matzah on the first night of Pesach, and subsequently there is no obligation to eat matzah. There is merely a prohibition against eating leaven. So that's important. Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 475. He said that although generally the blessing of time is recited over a cup of wine, one is not obligated to do so. That's Rav Nachman. That explains the validity of the custom to recite the blessing of time on Yom Kippur following the Kol Nidre prayer. That's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 619. We talk about Korban Vashirut Nufa. So that's the time of Beit HaMikdash, to rebuild soon in Mitzvah Hashem. The Rambam said in Hilchot Bikurim chapter 3, first fruit must be waved before the altar and are accompanied by peace offering shlamim as an expression of rejoicing. In addition, they are accompanied by a song in honor of the first fruits, which is sang by the Levites as the people enter the temple courtyard with the first fruit. One who brings first fruit to the temple in Jerusalem does not leave after completing the ceremony. Rather, he remains in the city overnight. Now, we discussed a little bit about the lottery. When we said the lottery for the 8th day of assembly is unrelated to the lottery conducted among the priestly watch on Sukkot. The offering sanctified on the 8th day of assembly are not a continuation of the offering sacrifice in the Sukkot. This day has its own distinct additional offering. Now, the Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 668 said that on the 8th day of assembly, Shmini Atzeret, both in prayer and in grace after meal, one mentioned the 8th day of assembly and not Sukkot. Yom HaShmini Chag Atzeret hazeh and not Sukkot.
מלאכם לשולוים, מלאכי השולוים, מלאכי